It is still pitch dark over the frozen Arctic Ocean on the morning of December 26, 1943, and the sea is in a violent mood, huge waves crashing endlessly against steel hulls while freezing wind howls across the water, carrying thick snow that stings the face and blinds the eyes, reducing visibility to only a few hundred meters, and cutting the world down to darkness, noise, and cold. As the German battleship Scharnhorst slices through the storm at high speed, her powerful engines roaring beneath the decks, driving her forward like a predator in the night, and on her bridge stands Counter-Admiral Eric Bay, gripping the railing as he peers into the blackness ahead, knowing that this mission is dangerous but believing that speed and surprise will protect them, because Scharnhorst is one of the fastest capital ships in the world, built to outrun anything she cannot outgun. And her task tonight is to hunt British merchant convoys sailing to the Soviet Union, slow and helpless ships carrying vital supplies, an easy target if everything goes right, yet Bay understands that the Royal Navy will react the moment Scharnhorst is detected, and still he presses forward, trusting his ship and his crew, unaware that fate has already placed powerful enemies directly in his path. As Scharnhorst drives deeper into the storm, the crew remains at battle stations, tense but focused, listening to the creaks and groans of the ship as waves slam against the hull, when suddenly the darkness is ripped apart by blinding white light as British star shells burst overhead, illuminating the sea like daylight for a terrifying moment, and Bay's heart sinks as he realizes they have been found. And almost instantly the flashes of British guns appear through the snow, followed by the shriek of incoming shells, which crash into the water around Scharnhorst with towering splashes, and Bay knows at once that this is no simple encounter, because the enemy fire is accurate and disciplined, the sign of trained crews and experienced commanders, and he quickly understands that Scharnhorst is facing British cruisers ready for battle, not helpless escorts, and that remaining on this course would mean destruction. So he orders an immediate hard turn away, commanding the ship to flee, while still returning fire, hoping to use Scharnhorst's speed to escape the trap that is closing around them. As the battleship swings around, her massive aft turret Caesar rotates smoothly despite the heavy seas, and with a thunderous roar it fires a full salvo toward the British ships, the blast shaking the entire vessel and echoing across the stormy ocean. But the British reply almost immediately, and within moments disaster strikes when a heavy shell slams directly into Scharnhorst's radar, smashing the fragile equipment that allows the ship to see through the darkness, and suddenly the Germans are blind, forced to rely only on eyesight in a raging snowstorm, while another shell crashes into the ship, sending violent shockwaves through the hull, and Bay demands damage reports, his voice sharp as he tries to keep control, ordering full power to the engines and smoke to be laid to conceal their escape, believing that if Scharnhorst can just pull away, the British will lose contact in the storm, and for a short time it seems to work. As the battleship surges forward, her engines pushing her faster and faster through the waves. Confident that speed has saved them, Bay orders Scharnhorst to return toward port, convinced that without radar the British will be unable to maintain the chase, and as the ship races south, the crew begins to believe they may survive after all. But what Bay does not know is that the British cruisers shadowing him are only the first part of a much larger plan, and as they pursue Scharnhorst through the darkness, they transmit her exact position, course, and speed to a far more powerful force. Waiting silently to the south, the battleship HMS Duke of York, commanded by Admiral Sir Bruce Fraser, who has come personally to destroy Scharnhorst, and when Fraser receives the transmission, he knows the trap is working perfectly, because the German ship is sailing straight toward his guns, completely unaware of the danger ahead. Hidden by darkness and storm, the Duke of York detects Scharnhorst on radar, a large contact moving fast across the screen, and Fraser orders his ship to close in slowly and quietly, refusing to rush the attack, because patience is his greatest weapon, and as the range drops, the British battleship stalks its prey through the icy seas, while aboard Scharnhorst the crew believes the battle is over, men allowing themselves brief moments of relief as they steam towards safety, when suddenly yet another star shell bursts directly ahead, lighting the sea in front of them, and in that instant Bay realizes the horrifying truth: a British battleship is dead ahead at close range, and before he can react, Admiral Fraser gives the order to fire. The Duke of York unleashes a full broadside, 10 enormous 14-inch guns erupting in a single deafening blast that shakes the ship from bow to stern, and the shells cross the short distance in seconds, slamming into Scharnhorst with devastating force, as one shell punches straight through the forward turret Anton, killing everyone inside instantly, while another forces the flooding of turret Bruno's magazine to prevent a catastrophic explosion, and in mere moments Scharnhorst loses half her main firepower, and Bay understands that the situation is desperate, because he cannot turn back due to the pursuing cruisers, and cannot continue forward under such heavy fire, leaving him with only one option, to run east and fight while running. Scharnhorst turns hard to port and accelerates to maximum speed, firing back with everything she has left, which for now is only the aft turret Caesar, whose guns roar defiantly into the storm, while British shells rain down around the ship, smashing into the superstructure, starting fires, and killing men at their stations, and in the chaos the Germans realize that turret Bruno was flooded unnecessarily. And in a desperate gamble they begin draining the magazine, bringing the turret back into action just as another British shell slams into it, filling the turret with smoke and forcing the crew to evacuate, and now Scharnhorst is once again reduced to a single main turret, racing through the storm while under relentless fire. Just when it seems that Scharnhorst might finally escape, fate twists once more as a German shell strikes the British battleship Duke of York, smashing into her superstructure and knocking out her radar, and in that instant the balance of the battle shifts dangerously, because without radar the British guns are blind in the darkness and storm, unable to accurately track the fleeing German ship. And aboard Scharnhorst Bay feels a surge of hope as reports come in that enemy fire has slowed, and the distance between them begins to grow, and once again speed appears to be their savior, as Scharnhorst surges forward through the freezing sea, her engines screaming as they push her to the limit, and for the first time since the trap was sprung Bay dares to believe they may survive, that they may outrun the British and disappear into the storm. But aboard the Duke of York, while senior officers struggle with confusion and uncertainty, one young man refuses to accept defeat, Lieutenant Harold Bates, a radar officer who understands that without radar the battle is lost, and seeing that the radar antenna has been knocked out of alignment rather than destroyed, he makes a decision that could cost him his life, choosing action over fear. Without waiting for orders and without telling anyone what he is about to do, Harold Bates climbs out into the freezing night, stepping onto the mast as the Duke of York crashes through towering waves, the icy wind tearing at his clothes and burning his skin, snow blinding his eyes as the ship's massive guns fire below him, each blast shaking the mast violently and threatening to throw him into the Black Sea far below, yet Bates presses on, clinging desperately to frozen metal with numb hands, knowing that every second matters, because Scharnhorst is pulling farther away with each passing moment, and as the British sailors below continue firing blindly into the darkness, Bates reaches the damaged radar antenna and strains with every ounce of strength he has, fighting the storm itself as he forces the heavy equipment back into alignment, his body battered, his muscles screaming, until finally, after what feels like an eternity, the radar flickers back to life, and inside the operations room a contact suddenly appears on the screen, clear and unmistakable, and the cry rings out across the ship that Scharnhorst has been found again. With the radar restored, the Duke of York's guns are quickly brought back on target, calculation shouted across the bridge as the ship adjusts course and speed, and when the order to fire is given, the great 14-inch guns thunder once more, sending shells arcing high into the stormy sky, and after long, agonizing seconds they come crashing down upon Scharnhorst. And one shell punches through her upper armor and explodes deep inside a boiler room, killing men instantly and tearing apart vital machinery, filling the compartment with fire, smoke, and steam. And when the damage report reaches Bay, his worst fears are confirmed, because Scharnhorst begins to slow rapidly, her once great speed bleeding away as steam pressure collapses, and though the engineers fight desperately below decks, working in smoke and darkness to restore power, the ship can no longer outrun her enemies. And now the British destroyers see their chance and begin to close in from all directions like wolves, surrounding a wounded giant. As the destroyers race forward through the waves, Scharnhorst's secondary guns open fire, their crews working relentlessly despite exhaustion, fear, and the growing list of casualties, trying to drive back the attackers before they can get close enough to launch torpedoes. But there are simply too many of them, and one after another the destroyers make their attack runs, releasing spreads of torpedoes that cut through the icy water toward the German battleship, and explosions rock Scharnhorst's hull as torpedoes strike home, ripping open her sides, flooding compartments, and causing the ship to list heavily. Yet even now the crew refuses to surrender, continuing to fire what guns remain, continuing to fight even as flames rage across the decks and the ship shudders with every impact, and realizing that the end is inevitable, Bay orders a final message transmitted to Germany, declaring that Scharnhorst will fight to the last shell, and only when the ship is clearly dying beneath his feet does he finally give the order to abandon ship, offering his men the last chance at survival. As sailors leap into the freezing Arctic water, many already wounded or exhausted, Scharnhorst continues to burn and break apart, her remaining guns firing until they are finally silenced by damage and flooding, and slowly the great battleship begins to roll onto her side, the sea pouring into the countless holes torn into her hull, and as she sinks bow first into the darkness, nearly 2,000 men are carried down with her into the icy depths, leaving only a handful struggling in the water. As British ships cautiously approach to rescue survivors, and Admiral Sir Bruce Fraser watches in silence as the enemy's ship disappears beneath the waves, deeply aware that he has witnessed not just a victory, but the end of a proud and powerful warship and the loss of almost an entire crew, and later he speaks words of respect for the courage shown by Scharnhorst and her men, because even in the brutality of war, bravery and sacrifice are recognized on both sides, and as the Arctic storm continues to rage and erase all signs of the battle, the story of Scharnhorst lives on as a haunting reminder of speed, firepower, human courage, and a final stand against overwhelming odds.